The starport at New Mars Colony lay in ruins. The twisted metal of once proud docking bays now scattered like broken bones across the red landscape. Alara Vance stood at the observation deck, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she stared at the desolation. 7 years had passed since the Ousted. 7 years since the Galactic Council had revoked humanity's membership and confined them to what they mockingly called the Exile Zone. Ambassador Vance. The voice behind her was hesitant, respectful of her contemplation. Alara turned, her shoulders straightening automatically. Old habits died hard. She was no longer an ambassador, hadn't been since the council escorts had physically removed the human delegation from the Grand Chambers. But the title had stuck among the colonists of New Mars, a reminder of what was lost. "I'm not an ambassador anymore, Talia. Just call me Alara." Talia nodded, her young face solemn. "The Coalition Council is assembled. They're waiting for you." Alara took one last look at the ruined starport, a monument to broken promises and crushed aspirations. Humanity had been so close to full integration with the galactic community. 237 years after first contact, they had finally been granted provisional membership to the Galactic Council, only to have it stripped away when Council species accused them of dangerous innovation rates and cultural incompatibility. The walk to the Coalition chambers took them through the underground networks that had become the heart of New Mars. After the Ousted, when Council-aligned corporations withdrew their infrastructure support, these tunnels had been hastily converted from maintenance passages to main thoroughfares. Now, they bustled with human activity, merchants hawking locally manufactured goods, children racing to improvise schools, engineers discussing the latest modifications to the colony's life support systems. This was humanity's response to exile, stubborn resilience. The displaced coalition had formed almost immediately, uniting the scattered human colonies within the exile zone. And against all odds, they were surviving. More than surviving, they were rebuilding. The Coalition Council chamber had once been a storage depot. Now it housed representatives from 12 human settlements spread across 4 planets in the exile zone. As Alara entered, conversation died down, and all eyes turned to her. "Counselors," she greeted, taking her place at the head of the oval table. No elaborate introductions, no ceremonial procedures. Another stark contrast to the ritualistic formality of the Galactic Council. Marcus Chen, the mining colony representative, began to speak, but Alara raised her hand. "Before we begin the regular reports, we have an urgent matter." She nodded to the man standing quietly by the door. "Captain Raj Singh has returned from the uncharted sectors with a discovery that could change everything." Captain Singh stepped forward, his weathered face showing the strain of his recent journey. The former Earth Navy commander now led the Coalition's small fleet of retrofitted ships, most of them salvaged from abandoned human outposts or purchased through black market channels from minor alien species, willing to risk Council censure. 3 weeks ago, the Horizon discovered a derelict ship drifting in the void beyond the Archimedes cluster. Singh began, his deep voice resonating in the chamber. "It wasn't of Council design. Nothing we've ever encountered before. The architecture suggests it predates even the oldest Council species." He placed a data crystal on the table, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive crystalline structure, angular and alien. "We believe it was an archive vessel, designed to preserve knowledge. Most of its systems were degraded beyond recovery, but we managed to extract partial data cores." Singh's voice lowered, adding weight to his next words. "What we found were technical schematics, advanced hyperdrive configurations unlike anything in current use, and designs for self-replicating construction systems that could revolutionize our manufacturing capabilities." The council chamber erupted into exclamations and questions. Alara let the initial reaction wash over the room before raising her hand for silence. Captain Singh has verified the viability of these designs with our engineering teams, she said. But we face a critical decision. This technology exceeds Council restrictions on human development. Using it would be a direct challenge to the terms of our exile. Councillor Ibrahim from the Europa settlement shook his head. The Council already treats us as pariahs. What more could they do? Total embargo. Military action. They control the hyperlanes, countered Councillor Yoshida from Titan Base. We're surviving now, but we're dependent on limited trade with non-aligned species. That could end. Surviving isn't enough, Alara said, her voice cutting through the debate. We were ousted because several Council species feared our potential. They saw humanity as a threat to the status quo, to their power, and instead of facing that threat, they eliminated it. She walked around the table, making eye contact with each counselor. For 7 years, we've been playing by their rules, hoping for readmission, for forgiveness. But the archive ship is a sign. There were civilizations before the Council, and there will be civilizations after it. She placed her palm on the holographic image, causing light to scatter through her fingers. I propose Operation Phoenix. We use this technology not just to survive, but to rebuild, to create something stronger than what we lost. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity would take this chance, risks and all. As the Council dispersed, Captain Singh approached Alara. It won't be easy. The engineering challenges alone. We'll find a way, Alara interrupted. Humanity always does. And when we return to galactic space, the Council will find that exiling us was their greatest mistake. The fabrication facility hidden within the asteroid belt of the Tartarus system hummed with activity. What had once been a minor mining operation was now the birthplace of humanity's resurgence. Massive robotic arms, guided by teams of engineers, assembled components that would soon become the first human vessel equipped with the recovered hyperdrive technology. Dr. Lin Nguyen watched the process from her workstation, her eyes tracking the minute adjustments to the quantum stabilizer assembly. At 58, she had been one of Earth's preeminent theoretical physicists before the Ousted. Now, she was leading the scientific breakthrough that might restore humanity's place among the stars. The temporal alignment is still fluctuating in the beta quadrant, she noted, highlighting the problematic section on her holographic display. Beside her, Dr. Aaron Patel nodded, his fingers dancing across his own interface. I'm compensating with an additional buffer array. The crystal matrix should stabilize once it's fully integrated with the power core. The two scientists had been working tirelessly for months, translating the ancient schematics into something that could be built with available materials. They'd had to make compromises, adaptations, and intuitive leaps. But the prototype was finally taking shape. Dr. Nguyen, a voice called from the doorway. The captain would like a status update. Nguyen sighed, reluctantly pulling herself away from her work. Tell him I'll be there in 10 minutes. As she made her way through the bustling facility, she marveled at what they had accomplished in just under a year. Operation Phoenix had grown from a desperate gamble to a coordinated effort involving thousands of humans across multiple settlements. Security protocols were strict. Only a select few knew about the full scope of the project, but the energy of hope was palpable throughout the coalition. She found Captain Singh in the command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing the positions of coalition vessels and known council patrols. Captain, you wanted to see me. Singh turned, his face grave. Council activity has increased in the outer sectors. 3 patrol cruisers were spotted near the Helios Gateway yesterday. Nguyen frowned. Do they suspect something? Unlikely. Their pattern suggests routine surveillance. But it's a reminder that our window of opportunity may be limited. He gestured to the nearly complete vessel displayed on the main screen. How close are we? The Pioneer's Fire will be ready for its first test flight within 2 weeks. Nguyen replied, But Captain, even with the advanced drive, we're still outgunned by Council forces. One ship will be enough to prove the concept, Singh finished. Ambassador Vance has been in contact with potential allies. If the test is successful, we may not be alone for long. The Meridel trading outpost existed in a state of perpetual twilight. Located on an asteroid at the edge of a dust cloud, it received just enough starlight to cast long, shifting shadows across its domed habitats. It was exactly the kind of place where deals could be made outside Council oversight, a haven for smugglers, information brokers, and species who preferred to operate in the gray areas of galactic law. Alara had chosen it carefully for this meeting. She sat in a private booth at the back of an establishment that served intoxicants to a dozen different species. The hood of her cloak partially obscured her face, not that many here would recognize a human on sight. Since the Ousted, humans had become rare enough in mainstream galactic society to be nearly forgotten by some. The Meridel trader who entered and slid into the seat across from her was tall and willowy, with iridescent scales covering most of their visible skin. Their 4 eyes blinked in rapid sequence, a sign of nervous anticipation in their species. Trade Emissary Cora, Alara greeted quietly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Curiosity is a trait my people share with humans, Cora replied, their melodic voice pitched low. Your message mentioned a proposition that could reshape existing power structures. Such claims require evidence. Alara placed a small projector on the table between them. A 3-dimensional image appeared, showing the Pioneer's fire in flight, its distinctive drive signature clearly visible. This test was conducted 3 days ago in the uncharted regions beyond Tartarus, Alara explained. The vessel you see is equipped with technology recovered from pre-Council archives. Its hyperdrive efficiency exceeds current Council standards by approximately 340%. All 4 of Cora's eyes widened slightly. If this is genuine, it is, and it's merely the beginning. Alara deactivated the projector. The Meridel Consortium has long chafed under Council trade restrictions. Your people have the most extensive trading network outside Council control, but you're still forced to pay tariffs for access to main hyperlanes. A situation we have endured for generations, Cora acknowledged cautiously. What if you didn't have to? Alara leaned forward. The Coalition is prepared to share our technological developments with allies who recognize our sovereignty and right to exist without Council oversight. The Council would never allow. The Council may not have a choice, Alara interrupted. We're not seeking war, but we are reclaiming our place in the galaxy. Those who stand with us now will help shape what comes after. Cora was silent for a long moment, their inner eyelids flickering in thought. What exactly are you proposing? An alliance, trade routes through your existing networks, information exchange, and eventually, joint defense against Council aggression, because there will be aggression once they realize what's happening. You're asking us to risk everything. I'm asking you to imagine a galaxy where the Council doesn't dictate the terms of your existence, Alara countered. Where innovation isn't suppressed to maintain the status quo. The Meridel trader's scales rippled with subtle color changes, a physiological response Alara couldn't fully interpret. Finally, Cora spoke. I cannot commit the consortium without consultation, but I will bring your proposal to the trademasters, and I will recommend they listen carefully. It was a start, and as Alara left the outpost hours later, she felt a cautious optimism. The Meridel weren't the only species she had approached. The scholarly Vortan, whose pursuit of knowledge had been repeatedly hampered by Council restrictions, had shown particular interest. Several others had at least agreed to further discussions. The Council's hegemony had created resentments that ran deep through the galaxy. Humanity might have been the most recent victim of their controlling policies, but they were far from the first. The Pioneer's fire hung in space above New Mars, its sleek hull gleaming in the ruddy light of the distant sun. Unlike the utilitarian designs favored by most human vessels before the Ousted, this ship incorporated elements from the ancient archives, sweeping lines and crystalline structures integrated with familiar metal alloys. On the bridge, Captain Singh occupied the command chair, overseeing final preparations for their first tactical mission. Around him, a crew of 20 operated stations that would have required 3 times that number on pre-Ousted vessels. The efficiency of the new systems was just one of many advantages they now possessed. "All systems nominal, Captain," reported his first officer, Commander Elena Reyes. "Temporal pulse weapons charged and ready." Singh nodded, his expression solemn. What they were about to do would irrevocably change humanity's relationship with the Council. There would be no going back, no possibility of reconciliation through diplomatic channels. But the Council had already shown they had no interest in true coexistence with a species they couldn't control. Communications. Send the coded alert to our allies. Execute Phase 1 on my mark. Singh took a deep breath. Mark. The Pioneer's fire vanished from New Mars orbit, its advanced hyperdrive creating barely a ripple in space-time. Nothing like the obvious distortion fields generated by Council ships. When it reappeared, it was in the Corvus sector, a sparsely populated region known primarily for its mining operations. And directly ahead, patrolling the sector's main shipping lane, was a Council enforcement vessel. "Target locked," announced the tactical officer. "They're scanning us, sir, attempting to establish communication. Weapon status? Temporal pulse cannons charged. Target's shields are active but incompatible with our frequency modulation." Singh leaned forward in his chair. "Fire." The weapons that the Pioneer's fire unleashed were unlike anything the Council vessel had encountered. Rather than the conventional energy beams or plasma projections used throughout known space, these pulses created localized temporal distortions. Shields designed to deflect energy simply couldn't counter them. The Council ship's engines sputtered and died as temporal fields disrupted their normal function. Life support remained intact, a deliberate choice in the weapon's calibration, but the vessel was effectively paralyzed. "Transmission ready, Captain," the communications officer reported. Singh nodded. "Send it." On every communication channel, in every major galactic language, the same message was broadcast to the crippled Council ship and to any monitoring stations within range. "This is Captain Raj Singh of the Human Coalition vessel, Pioneer's Fire. For 7 years, humanity has endured unjust exile. Today, we reclaim our right to traverse the stars. We seek no conflict, but we will defend our freedom. The Galactic Council no longer holds exclusive authority over interstellar travel or technological development. A new era has begun." Within moments, the Pioneer's fire engaged its hyperdrive again, disappearing before any reinforcements could arrive. The statement had been made. The human return to galactic affairs had been announced not with diplomatic overtures, but with a demonstration of power that could not be ignored. When Singh reported the mission's success to the Coalition Council, the reaction was mixed. Some celebrated the boldness of the action, while others worried about the inevitable Council response. But all recognized that they had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back now. Alara, who had argued for this exact approach, addressed the concerns directly. "The Council respects strength above all else. Diplomatic entreaties would have been ignored or dismissed. Now, we have their attention, and while they mobilize their response, we will continue to build." In the following months, humanity's technological revolution accelerated. Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Patel, building on the ancient schematics, developed self-replicating terraforming swarms, microscopic machines that could transform hostile environments into habitable ones in a fraction of the time required by conventional methods. 3 dead worlds within the exile zone became production hubs, their barren surfaces blossoming with atmosphere processors and manufacturing facilities. The human population, which had been declining since the ouster, due to resource limitations, began to grow again. Hope, more powerful than any technology, spread through the settlements. Meanwhile, Ilara's diplomatic efforts bore fruit. The Meridel Consortium formally recognized the Human Coalition as a sovereign entity and established exclusive trade agreements. The Vorton scholars sent representatives to collaborate with human scientists, eager to access knowledge that had been suppressed under Council doctrine. Several other minor species, watching these developments with interest, began quiet negotiations of their own. But not all humans embraced the new direction. A faction within the coalition, led by Councillor Yoshida, raised ethical concerns about the aggressive expansion and the development of weapon systems. "We were victims of the Council's fear," Yoshida argued during a particularly heated session. "Are we now to become what they accused us of being? Warmongers? Disruptors?" Ilara faced the criticism directly. "We are becoming what we must to survive. The Council will not allow us to exist independently if they believe they can crush us. Every advance we make, every alliance we forge, is a shield against annihilation." "And the weapons, the military buildup, are these shields too?" "Yes," Ilara replied without hesitation. "But they are shields we hope never to use in actual conflict. The ideal outcome is that the Council recognizes our strength and agrees to coexistence on equal terms." The debate continued within coalition leadership, reflecting broader discussions throughout human settlements. They were questions of identity, as much as strategy. What kind of society would emerge from their exile? What values would they carry forward? How would power, suddenly and unexpectedly within their grasp, shape them? For Ilara, these questions were not abstract. Each decision weighed heavily on her. Each step forward required careful consideration of not just what they could do, but what they should do. The responsibility was enormous, and there were nights when sleep eluded her entirely, her mind racing with possibilities both triumphant and catastrophic. On one such night, she found herself in the observation dome of New Mars, staring up at the stars. Captain Singh discovered her there, his own troubled thoughts having driven him from his quarters. "Councillor Yoshida makes valid points," Singh said without preamble, joining her at the railing. "I've ordered men and women into battle before. I know the cost." Ilara didn't look away from the stars. "Do you think we're making a mistake?" "I think we're making a choice," he replied. "And choices have consequences we can't fully predict." "If you could go back, stop us from using the archive technology, return to simply surviving in exile, would you?" Singh considered the question seriously. "No," he finally said, "because surviving isn't living, and because I believe in what we could become, even with all the risks." Ilara nodded, finding comfort in his certainty even as her own doubts lingered. "The Council has begun mobilizing their fleet. Our intelligence suggests they're gathering near the Helix Nebula. A show of force to intimidate us, or preparation for a decisive strike?" Ilara turned to face him. "Either way, we need to accelerate our timeline. How soon can the next generation of ships be ready? With the new production facilities? 3 months? Maybe less." "Make it 2, Ilara said. "And prioritize defensive systems. If conflict becomes unavoidable, I want our people protected." As Singh left to implement her directives, Ilara remained in the observation dome, the weight of leadership heavy on her shoulders. They were building something unprecedented, a human-led coalition of species united, not by Council doctrine, but by shared interests and mutual respect. It was the vision she had held through 7 years of exile, though the path to achieving it had taken unexpected turns. Whether that vision would survive contact with the harsh realities of galactic politics remained to be seen. But humanity had already surpassed what anyone, including the Council, had thought possible. They would not surrender their second chance easily. The Council's response, when it came, was predictably bureaucratic at first. Formal condemnations were issued. Trade sanctions, largely symbolic given humanity's already restricted status, were announced. Diplomatic channels, such as they were, filled with demands for the immediate surrender of illegally obtained technology and the cessation of provocative military activities. But behind these official pronouncements, more concrete actions were taking place. Council patrol vessels increased their presence along the borders of the exile zone. Minor species known to have contact with humans found themselves subject to regulatory inspections and delays in council processing of their affairs. And, in the Grand Council chambers on Eternum Station, emergency sessions were convened to address what many councilors now termed the human problem. High Chancellor Vorthal, a member of the ancient Davex species, presided over these sessions with growing frustration. The Davex had been among the founding members of the Council 10,000 years earlier, and they regarded their dominant position as both natural and necessary for galactic stability. The human resurgence represented not just a challenge to Council authority, but a personal affront to Vorthal's sense of cosmic order. These primitives have somehow acquired technology beyond their development stage, he declared to the assembled representatives. Such violation of natural progression cannot be tolerated. The integrity of our hierarchical system depends on controlled advancement. Not all council members shared his vehemence. The Tellurian ambassador, whose species had often advocated for more inclusive policies, spoke cautiously of diplomatic re-engagement. "Perhaps we acted hastily in the original ouster," she suggested. "If humans have indeed discovered pre-council archives, this might indicate they were always destined for a more significant role than we anticipated." Vorthal's facial membranes flushed with indignation. "You speak of destiny? The Council determines the appropriate path for lesser species. That is our mandate, our purpose. Without our guidance, chaos would reign." The debate continued, revealing fractures within the Council that had been growing for centuries. Older species like the Davex insisted on maintaining traditional power structures. Younger members, many of whom had their own histories of restriction and controlled advancement, showed more sympathy for the human position. But while the Council deliberated, humanity continued to build. The Pioneer's Fire was now joined by a fleet of similar vessels, each incorporating refinements and improvements. Terraforming operations transformed 2 more worlds in the exile zone. Trade networks expanded through Meridel channels, and human diplomatic envoys, operating from the shadows, continued to forge connections with disaffected species throughout Council space. The balance of power was shifting, incrementally but inexorably. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council's hegemony faced a genuine challenge. Eternum Station orbited the ceremonial homeworld of the Davex, a gas giant whose swirling storms had been likened to the eyes of watchful gods in ancient texts. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive ring structure large enough to house representatives from hundreds of species, with specialized environments to accommodate their diverse biological needs. It was here, in the heart of Council power, that the final confrontation would take place. For 2 years, following the first appearance of the Pioneer's Fire, a cold war had simmered between humanity and the Council. Border skirmishes, proxy conflicts through allied minor species, information warfare, all had been employed, but neither side had committed to full-scale engagement. Until now, the Council fleet gathered near Eternum numbered over 300 vessels, the largest military assembly in recent memory. At its center was the Eternal Vigilance, the Council flagship, a vessel the size of a small moon, bristling with the most advanced weapon systems the Council races had developed. High Chancellor Vorthal personally commanded this armada, his patience finally exhausted by human defiance. Intelligence reports indicated that the human coalition was preparing a major push beyond the exile zone, potentially establishing permanent bases in strategic sectors. Such expansion could not be permitted. The order was given. The fleet would advance on human-controlled space, neutralize their military capabilities, and restore the containment that had been breached. The operation was presented to the Council as a peacekeeping mission, a necessary intervention to maintain galactic stability. But, as the massive fleet prepared to depart Eternum's orbit, their sensors detected anomalies at the edge of the system. Distortion fields unlike any they had documented began to appear, multiplying rapidly in a formation that surrounded the Council forces. And then, emerging from these distortions, came the human fleet. Not the small collection of retrofitted vessels that Council intelligence had reported, but an armada to rival their own. Ships of various designs, some clearly influenced by the ancient archive technology, others incorporating elements from Meridel, Vortan, and other allied species, took position in a strategic encirclement. At the center of the human formation was a vessel larger than even the Eternal Vigilance. Its hull gleamed with a crystalline sheen that seemed to absorb and refract light in impossible ways. This was the Concordium, the culmination of 2 years of human innovation and alliance building, commanded by Captain Raj Singh himself. On the bridge of the Concordium, Singh surveyed the tactical displays with calm determination. The plan had been meticulously prepared, every contingency accounted for. Beside him stood Alara Vance, no longer just a coalition leader, but the designated representative of the United Human Alliance. "All ships report ready, Captain," Commander Reyes announced. "Allied vessels are in position." Singh nodded. "Open a channel to the Eternal Vigilance." On the main screen, the imperious face of High Chancellor Vorthal appeared, his membranous features contorted in what humans had learned to recognize as contempt. "This Council fleet is engaged in a sanctioned peacekeeping operation," Vorthal declared before Singh could speak. "Your presence is unauthorized and provocative. Withdraw immediately or face appropriate consequences." "High Chancellor," Singh replied evenly, "we are here to prevent an act of aggression against sovereign territories. The Human Alliance and its partners propose an immediate ceasefire and diplomatic negotiations." "There will be no negotiations with species who defy Council authority. You have been offered terms of containment more generous than your primitive development warrants. Further defiance will result in your complete subjugation." Alara stepped forward, placing herself in the transmission field. "Your terms are rejected, Chancellor. Humanity and our allies will no longer accept the Council's arbitrary restrictions. We seek peaceful coexistence, but we are prepared to defend our rights by any means necessary." Vorthal's membranes pulsated with fury. "You speak of rights? The Council alone determines—" "The Council's time as sole arbiter of galactic affairs has ended," Alara interrupted, her voice firm. "A new balance must be established, one based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy." The transmission cut off abruptly. Moments later, the Council fleet began to move, weapon systems powering up as they advanced toward the human position. "They've made their choice," Singh said quietly. "Implement Quantum Shield Protocol. All ships. Execute Phase 1 of the Gemini stratagem." What followed was a battle unlike any recorded in Council history. The human fleet, instead of engaging directly with the superior numbers of the Council Armada, executed a complex series of tactical jumps, their advanced hyperdrives allowing them to appear and disappear faster than Council targeting systems could track. Meanwhile, from hidden positions throughout the system, swarms of autonomous drones, developed by Dr. Nguyen's team based on the self-replicating technology, deployed quantum shield generators. These devices created overlapping fields that selectively disrupted weapons fire, while allowing ships to pass through unimpeded, but only ships whose signatures were keyed to the Human Alliance. The Council fleet found itself in an impossible position. Their weapons were ineffective, their movements were constrained, and with each passing moment, more of their vessels were isolated and neutralized by precision strikes from human ships that appeared, fired, and vanished before countermeasures could be deployed. On the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, chaos reigned. None of the Council's military doctrines had prepared them for this form of warfare. Their technological superiority, long taken for granted, had been not just matched, but surpassed. "Impossible," Forthall muttered as another report of neutralized vessels reached him. "They cannot have advanced this far, this quickly." But the evidence was undeniable. After 3 hours of one-sided engagement, nearly 2/3 of the Council fleet had been disabled or forced to withdraw. The remainder, including the flagship, found themselves surrounded by human vessels that now maintained fixed positions, their earlier hit-and-run tactics no longer necessary. A transmission from the Concordium appeared on the command center's main screen. Captain Singh's face showed neither triumph nor vindictiveness, only resolute purpose. "High Chancellor, further resistance is futile. Your weapons are ineffective against our defenses, and your ships cannot escape our containment field. I offer you 2 choices: surrender and participate in peace negotiations, or continue this conflict and face complete defeat." Vorthal's pride warred with his tactical assessment. For 10,000 years, the Dovex had never yielded to a lesser species. To do so now would shatter the foundations of Council hierarchy. But before he could respond, the Tellurian ambassador and representatives from several other Council species entered the command center. "Chancellor," the Tellurian said, her melodious voice firm, "the Council is divided. Many of us believe negotiation is the only rational course. We have contacted our governments, and they have authorized us to pursue immediate ceasefire terms." "Traitors!" Forthall hissed. "You would capitulate to these upstarts?" "We would survive," another counselor retorted, "and perhaps learn from those we too hastily dismissed." The internal conflict that had been brewing within the Council for centuries finally erupted into open discord. Species that had long chafed under Dijkvek's dominance saw an opportunity for change. Those who had advocated for more inclusive policies found their positions suddenly strengthened. In the end, it was not the human weapons that defeated the Council, but the Council's own internal contradictions. The system that had maintained stability through rigid hierarchy could not adapt to the radical change humanity represented. Vorthall, seeing his authority crumbling before him, made one last desperate attempt to reassert control. "I will not surrender this vessel or the Council's dignity to primitive usurpers. Prepare the gravitational collapse weapon. If we cannot maintain order, we will leave them nothing but chaos." But as the flagship's crew moved to implement this doomsday order, they found their systems unresponsive. Control interfaces froze, power fluctuations cascaded through critical systems, and on every screen throughout the massive vessel, a simple message appeared. "This ship is now under the protection of the Human Alliance. All weapon systems have been neutralized. Life support and essential functions remain operational." The final revelation, that humans had somehow infiltrated the most secure vessel in Council space, shattered what remained of Vorthal's resolve. His collapse, when it came, was as complete as it was unexpected. The High Chancellor, symbol of Council authority for over 3 centuries, slumped in his command chair, membranous features slack with defeat. The Battle of Eternum Station was over, and with it, the unchallenged reign of the Galactic Council had come to an end. In the months that followed, the galaxy experienced upheaval on a scale not seen since the Council's formation. The immediate aftermath of the battle saw the Council fracture into multiple factions. Many species formally recognized the Human Alliance and established diplomatic relations. Others, primarily those most closely aligned with the Dovex, maintained their opposition but were no longer in a position to enforce it. For Alara Vance, the military victory was merely the beginning of a more complex challenge, building a new galactic order that avoided the Council's mistakes while preserving what had been valuable in their system. "We didn't fight to replace one empire with another," she reminded the coalition leadership as they gathered on New Mars to discuss their next steps. We fought for the right to determine our own path, and to extend that right to others who have been similarly constrained. Her vision was ambitious, a new interstellar community based on principles of mutual respect, technological exchange, and collaborative security. Not a single governing body imposing its will, but a federation of equals making collective decisions. The Concordium, the vessel that had led the human fleet to victory, gave its name to this new approach. The Concordium Accord was drafted with input from humans and 24 formerly minor species, establishing frameworks for trade, diplomacy, scientific cooperation, and dispute resolution. While negotiations continued, the practical work of rebuilding began. Human terraforming technology transformed worlds that had been deemed uninhabitable under Council restrictions. Meridel trade networks expanded, now officially sanctioned rather than operating in gray markets. Vortan scholars established new academies where knowledge was shared freely rather than carefully controlled. And at the heart of this transformation was the human spirit of innovation, no longer feared as destabilizing, but celebrated as the engine of progress. 6 months after the Battle of Eternum, Alara traveled to what had once been the Council's capital. Eternum Station had been repurposed, its Grand Council chamber rebuilt as the Concordium Assembly Hall. Representatives from over 50 species, including several former council members who had chosen to join the new order, gathered for a historic occasion. As Alara walked through the corridors toward the chamber, she found herself accompanied by Captain Singh. His uniform now bore the insignia of the Human Alliance Defense Force, the unified military organization that had evolved from the coalition fleet. "Nervous?" he asked, noting her measured pace. Alara smiled slightly. "Contemplative. When I was expelled from these halls 7 years ago, I never imagined returning under these circumstances." "You imagined something better," Singh replied. "And then you made it happen." "We made it happen," she corrected. "All of us, working together." They reached the entrance to the assembly hall, where Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Patel waited with a delegation of human and alien dignitaries. The scientists had become celebrated figures throughout Allied space, their work with the archive technology having opened possibilities that benefited countless worlds. "They're ready for you, Ambassador," Dr. Nguyen said, using the title that had been formally restored when Alara was appointed to represent humanity in the new assembly. But today, she would receive a different title. The ceremony was solemn, yet hopeful, blending traditions from dozens of cultures into something new and uniquely inclusive. Representatives spoke of the challenges they had faced under the old order and their aspirations for the future. Historical grievances were acknowledged, not to assign blame, but to ensure the same mistakes would not be repeated. And then came the moment that would be recorded in the histories of 100 worlds. Alara Vance, once exiled ambassador, now stood before the gathered delegates as they unanimously confirmed her appointment as the first human chancellor of the Concordium. As she accepted the symbolic mantle of office, a crystalline circlet that honored the archive technology that had made their revolution possible, Alara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the ruins of New Mars to the grandeur of Eternum, from exile to leadership, from despair to hope. "We stand at the threshold of a new era," she told the assembly. "Not one defined by human dominance, but by the shared potential of all sentient beings. The stars have always been our destination, all of us, regardless of our origins. And now, together, we will explore not just their physical reaches but the boundless possibilities of cooperation across differences." The applause that greeted her words echoed through the chamber and beyond, carried by transmission to worlds throughout what was now being called the Concordium space. On these worlds, beings of diverse forms and histories celebrated not conquest, but connection. Not the rise of a new empire, but the birth of a more equitable cosmic community. In the years that followed, This vision continued to evolve and expand. Integrated academies brought together scholars from formerly separated species, leading to breakthroughs in medicine, physics, and environmental science. Mixed crews on exploration vessels charted regions of space previously considered too hazardous or remote. Collaborative governance structures ensured that no single species, human or otherwise, could dominate the decision-making process. It wasn't perfect. There were conflicts, setbacks, and ongoing resistance from those who clung to the old hierarchies. The former High Chancellor Vorthal and his loyalists established a separatist enclave in distant sectors, occasionally launching raids against Concordium interests. Old prejudices didn't disappear overnight, and new frictions emerged as different cultures learned to work together. But these challenges were met not with suppression or exile, but with patience, dialogue, and a commitment to mutual growth. The Concordium didn't demand conformity. It celebrated diversity while identifying the common aspirations that united all sentient life. For Alara, now guiding this ambitious experiment in interstellar cooperation, the greatest satisfaction came not from personal power, but from witnessing the flowering of possibilities that had once been suppressed. Each new discovery, each peaceful resolution of conflict, each collaborative project that improved lives across multiple worlds. These were the true measures of success. And when she occasionally found time to stand alone in the observation dome of her quarters on Eternum Station, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and forbidding, she felt not pride, but gratitude. Humanity had been cast out, forced to rebuild from nothing, only to create something greater than what had been lost. The empire they had built wasn't one of conquest, but of connection. Not of subjugation, but of synergy. And in that difference lay the promise of a future limited only by their collective imagination and compassion. The stars, once again, belong to everyone,